Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. Something that's been on my mind a lot lately, and I'm guessing it's probably on yours too, is just how much of our lives are digital now. I mean, think about it. Pretty much everything, right? And that brings up a pretty big question.
Yeah.
How do we make sure all that information stays private, like truly ours? Especially in a world where it feels like a handful of big companies are holding on to so much of it.
Absolutely. It's a huge question. And honestly, it's getting bigger every day. Our
Yeah.
digital footprint just keeps growing and growing.
Right.
And figuring out where all that data goes, who can see it, who can use it, that's becoming more and more important for everyone.
No doubt. And that leads us to what we're diving deep into today. It's a solution called Deed Spaces, and it comes from a company called ArcBlock.
Interesting.
Yeah. Their CEO, Robert Mao, the big idea here, he calls it a trusted digital safe, like a secure place for everything important in your digital world.
Okay, I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
A unified, safe space for all your digital stuff.
Exactly. But as always, our goal here is to look beyond the marketing hype. We want to understand what this really means for you, the listener.
Right, cut through the noise.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we've got some great material to work with. We've got this article from ArcBlock. It lays out what Did Spaces is all about and compares it to, well, everything. Those cloud services we all use like iCloud, Google One.
Familiar names.
Yep. And then even some options that aim to give you more control, like decentralized storage and systems you can host yourself. So by the end of this conversation, you'll have a much clearer picture of what Did Spaces is, what it can do, and maybe most importantly, whether it's the right fit for you and how you want to manage your whole digital life.
Sounds comprehensive.
It is. So let's jump right in. What exactly Did Spaces? What's the core concept?
Right, so at its heart, Did Spaces is about giving you, the user, decentralized storage. But here's the thing, and this is what I find really interesting. It's built using standard web technologies.
Oh, so it's not like some completely new system.
Yeah. Right. It's not a from-the-ground-up proprietary thing. Instead, they are leveraging existing internet foundations.
Okay.
And this focus on web standards is super important because it's all about interoperability, making sure different apps and services can actually work together smoothly with your data.
Gotcha. So existing internet, but a different approach to how data is stored and who controls it.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
And a central part of this is the use of DDIs.
DIGs.
Yeah, decentralized identifiers. Think of it like a unique digital passport, but it only belongs to you. No government or company issued it.
Ah,
And it lets you prove who you are and control your data without needing some central authority.
interesting.
And these DIDs, they are fundamental to how you share data securely in DDID spaces. Because you decide who can access it, what they can do with it. It's all about granular control.
I see. So it's not just about where the data lives, it's about having finer control over access.
You got it.
Okay, so earlier we mentioned Robert Mao, the CEO of ArcBlock. He talks about ID Spaces being like a trusted digital safe, and he highlights a few key things it can do. Self-hosting, backing up application data, and ensuring high data portability. Let's break those down a bit.
Sure. Let's start with self-hosting. This is a big one. Unlike iCloud or Google One, Did Spaces gives you the option to actually host your data yourself, completely free.
Oh, so I can literally keep my data on my own server if I wanted to.
Exactly. That puts you in the driver's seat regarding where your data physically lives. No reliance on some giant company's servers.
That's a lot of control.
It is. Then there's application data backup. This is another key feature. Did Spaces is designed to back up not just your files, but the data from the apps you use, especially if they're built using ArcBlock's Blocklet framework.
Blocklet framework, what's that?
Think of it like building apps with Lego bricks.
Right.
So Did Spaces can back up all the information stored within these bricks in a standardized way.
Huh. Interesting analogy.
And finally, there's data portability. This is like a guiding principle for them. They want your data to move around easily. You shouldn't be locked into one platform.
I like that. That's a big deal these days. It feels like everything wants to keep you in their ecosystem.
Right.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense, but let's get practical here. How does this stack up against what most of us are using now, like Apple's iCloud and Google One?
Sure.
We've got this great comparison chart here. First up, something really basic. Who actually owns the data?
Right. This is where the difference is really stark. With DD Spaces, they are very clear. Your data completely under your control. You're the owner, plain and simple. But with iCloud and Google One, well, it's different. You create the data, sure, but you're essentially storing it on their infrastructure. With iCloud, your data is within Apple's ecosystem. With Google One, it's managed by Google.
Yeah, okay.
So you're subject to their terms of service when it comes to your data.
Yeah.
And they can potentially use it for their own purposes, which, is often how these big cloud providers operate.
Right, right. So even if I trust Apple or Google to handle my data responsibly, they're
Yeah.
just still the ones setting the rules.
Exactly. It's their playground.
What about privacy then? I mean, that's a huge concern for pretty much everyone these days.
Another key difference, ArcBlock is very clear. With deed spaces, your privacy is in your own hands. Because you control where it's stored and who can see it, you have a lot more direct control over your privacy.
Makes sense.
Now with iCloud and Google One, they do use encryption to protect your data in transit and at rest.
Right.
And companies like Apple, they've really pushed their commitment to privacy, and you can find a lot of information on how they approach privacy in their white papers and stuff.
Okay.
But there's still this potential for them to access metadata, the data about your data, which can reveal a lot about your activity.
Oh.
In Google, they encrypt data too, but their whole business model has historically involved using data for personalized ads. Unless, of course, users specifically go in and change their privacy settings. So the level of control you have over your privacy is just different.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like there are a lot more layers with those big companies.
Definitely.
Okay, so this whole self-hosting thing, that sounds like a big plus for anyone who really wants to take control.
No doubt.
iCloud and Google One, they don't even offer that, right?
No, not at all. Self-hosting with DID spaces gives you a level of independence you just won't find with the big guys. You're not tied to their infrastructure. You're not subject to their potential policy changes that could impact your data.
Yeah, that's appealing.
Right.
What about things like having a network drive? Being able to access my files from any of my devices. Is that something DID Spaces offers?
They do. Actually, all three of them do. DID Spaces has their own storage app, iCloud has iCloud Drive, and Google One integrates with Google Drive.
Okay, so they're all on par there.
Yep, they've all got you covered for basic file storage and access across your devices.
Cool. What about backing up all the data from the various apps I use, like on my phone, on my computer? That's something I rely on a lot.
Yeah, that's important. This is where DD Spaces gets interesting. They support application data backup for any app that's built to use their protocol, including those blocklets we talked about. iCloud has iCloud Backup, covers a lot of data on your Apple devices, and Google One offers backup specifically for Android apps. But the key difference with the IT spaces seems to be its open nature.
Okay, how so?
Well, if an app is designed to work with DID spaces, its data can be backed up, regardless of what operating system you're on or what platform you're using.
That does sound more flexible, like it could work with whatever comes along in the future. What about accessing data that's specific to certain apps, like, my notes or my photos or my to-do lists?
Again, DT Spaces is all about that open ecosystem. Any app that integrates with their protocol can store and access data within your personal space. iCloud uses iCloud Kit for apps to integrate, and Google One, well, it plays very nicely with Google's own apps like Gmail, Docs, Photos.
Yeah, of course.
But the difference seems to be in the philosophy. DT Spaces is aiming to be more universal, less tied to specific platforms.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, let's talk sharing. It's a huge part of how we all use our devices and interact online. How does sharing work with DT Spaces compared to, what we're used to with iCloud or Google One?
So this is where those decentralized identifiers, the DIDs, become super important. Deed Spaces lets you share data directly with other users using their DIDs. It's very controlled, like giving someone a key to a specific room in your digital safe, and you can revoke that key anytime you want.
And you don't need to involve some central authority to do that.
Nope, it's all peer-to-peer. But with iCloud and Google One, sharing is usually tied to your account. Works best within their own ecosystem. You share a folder using an email link or something like that. It's convenient, but they're the ones managing the control over who has access.
Ah, okay. So less granular control. Got it. Now, what if, down the road, I decide DD Spaces isn't for me, or I want to move my data somewhere else? How easy is it to actually get my data out of DD Spaces? I mean, data portability seems like a big deal here.
Absolutely. ArcBlock really emphasizes that Deed Spaces is designed from the ground up with high data portability in mind. Because you own the data and it's built on open standards, moving it to another service or even storing it locally should be pretty straightforward.
Okay, good to know.
Now with iCloud, moving data outside the Apple world has always been a bit tricky historically. And while Google does offer Google Takeout, where you can export your data, it can be a real pain. especially if you've got a lot of stuff.
Ugh, yeah, I've been through that.
Not fun.
All right, last but not least, the topic no one loves to talk about, but we have to. Pricing and payment. How does it all work?
So iCloud and Google One, both subscription models, pay a monthly or yearly fee based on how much storage you need. Did Spaces offers subscription options too, if you prefer the convenience of them managing the hosting.
Okay.
But here's where they differ. They also have a free tier if you choose to self-host.
Ah, interesting.
So that could be a big cost saver for users who are a bit more tech savvy.
Mm-hmm.
And Did Spaces accepts payment not just through credit cards, but also through cryptocurrency tokens.
Oh, wow, keeping up with the times.
Right. They even mentioned that pay-as-you-go support might be coming in the future, which isn't something you see from iCloud or Google One.
All right, so it sounds like Diddy Spaces has some pretty compelling advantages, especially when it comes to data ownership, privacy, and putting the user in control. But how does it compare to other solutions out there that are already focused on those things, either through decentralization or by letting you host things yourself? We've got some comparisons here with MyData, IPFS Filecoin, Arweave, Cozy Cloud, and even just setting up your own NAS at home.
Great point. This is where we get into the finer points, the nuances, the different philosophies behind these various approaches. Let's start with MyData. Their focus is really on putting individuals in control of their personal data across different platforms and services, whether that data is in the cloud or on their own devices.
Okay.
They're big on the idea of easy sharing and giving users control over their digital identity. They have a whole set of principles, and you can find them online if you're interested.
So similar goals to Diddy Spaces, at least at a high level.
Yeah, in terms of putting the user in control, absolutely. But their approach is a bit different. DSpaces seems to want a more integrated and unified experience. A single digital safe for not just your data, but also your apps, your digital identity. And it's all secured with what they call blockchain-level security. MyData is more of a set of principles and a framework for how to approach data management in a user-centric way. So the level of portability and integration, it can really vary depending on how individual users and services implement those principles.
So it's more of a guideline than a specific solution.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
What about IPFS and Filecoin? Those names come up a lot in the world of decentralized storage.
They do. I've definitely heard of them, but I'm not totally clear on what they are.
So IPFS stands for Interplanetary File System. It's really good for sharing files quickly and efficiently, especially big files that aren't necessarily confidential. Then Filecoin adds a kind of economic layer on top of that. It incentivizes users to provide storage space and offers paid, guaranteed storage. But the article points out that these technologies might not be the best fit for highly sensitive data that needs really tight access control and privacy. DSpaces, on the other hand, is built specifically with the secure storage and management of personal data in mind.
Right. So quickly sharing big files publicly has different needs than a personal digital safe for sensitive stuff.
Exactly. It's all about choosing the right tool for the job.
Makes sense. What about Arweave? I know they're all about permanent data storage.
Yeah, that's their thing. Arweave's biggest strength is that they offer permanent data storage with just a one-time payment. No subscriptions or anything. Wow. It's perfect for archiving things you never want to lose or have tampered with, like, important historical documents.
Oh, I see.
The downside is that it can be slower and more expensive for storing large amounts of data that you access regularly.
Makes sense. It's a different use case.
Exactly. DSpaces, while it emphasizes keeping your data safe through backups, is more focused on managing and accessing the data you use every day, your active digital life.
Got it. What about Cozy Cloud? I've heard that name as a private cloud option that gives you more control.
Cozy Cloud is a good option for people who want a simple, private cloud solution. They have both a hosted service and a self-hosting option, and have both free and paid plans. It's definitely easier to use and gives you more control than the big cloud providers. But if you want to self-host, you do need some technical know-how to set it up and maintain it. DSpaces is also aiming to be user-friendly, but it offers more features, especially around decentralized identity and secure data management.
So Cozy Cloud is simpler, but DSpaces is more comprehensive.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Right. And lastly, we have the option that's been around forever, setting up your own NAS, network-attached storage at home. It's basically your own personal server.
Right. With an NAS, you get a lot of speed and control because it's your own hardware sitting right there in your home. You're in charge of everything.
Sounds powerful.
It is. But it also means you're responsible for setting it up, maintaining it, backing up your data, dealing with potential hardware failures, all that stuff. Did Spaces offers the benefits of decentralization, that kind of control, but without the hassle of buying, configuring, and managing your own hardware.
Right, right. So you're trading some control for convenience.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay, so looking at all these different options, it seems like Did DSpaces is trying to find this sweet spot, right? It wants to be user-friendly and secure like the cloud services are all used to, but with the control and privacy benefits of those decentralized or self-hosted solutions. And it doesn't seem as if you need to be a tech whiz to use it.
You got it.
Hmm.
And the article highlights that Did Spaces is specifically designed to handle sensitive information. Things like medical records, financial documents, anything you really want to keep safe.
And that makes sense given their whole focus on decentralized identifiers and secure data management. So as we wrap things up here, what would you say is the big takeaway for someone listening? What's the core value proposition of Diddy Spaces?
The core benefit is really about putting you in control of your digital life, giving you more power over your data, more privacy. It's a decentralized approach, but they've tried to make it easy to use. You get to decide where your data is stored, who can see it, and how easy it is to move if you want to switch to something else later on.
And it's a good reminder that those big convenience services like iCloud and Google One, that convenience comes at a price. You give up some control over your data, and you're trusting those companies to use it responsibly.
Exactly.
And while those decentralized options and self-hosting, they offer more control, they can be a pain to figure out and manage.
Yeah, there's definitely a trade-off.
So the question for you, the listener, is this. As your digital life keeps expanding, how much control do you really want over your data? Are you comfortable with the balance you have now? Or could something like Did Spaces, with its focus on putting you in charge, be a better fit for your digital future? If you're curious, you can learn more about Did Spaces at https://www.didspaces.com.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out.
And thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Thanks for having me.
We'll catch you next time.